devote my life to coaching leaders because they are people like what I used to be. And most of the time, the Agile projects, you know, everybody says they want to be Agile, they want to do Agile, they want to start their transformation or they're on their transformation. Most of the time, the teams working on these transformations are frustrated because the leaders aren't Agile yet. So I spend my time working with senior leaders as well, just like Chen Chen. Because I think that is the point in the enterprise that's going to determine agility or not, or at least acceleration towards the change.
Thank you very much
Thank you
for your introduction. Our third panelist is an Agile transformation lead and product development executive. He has 30 years experience in designing and delivering products in multiple domains. He is a seasoned speaker and DevOps testing and Agile conference. Please join our hand to welcome Marcelo. Marcelo, just give you us some brief description of your journey related to agility.
Sure, just unmuting here. Well, bumpy, to say the least, very bumpy. So most of my experience is being in large corporations. So very, very difficult, right? A lot of difficulties you find in bureaucracy, the common patterns you find dysfunctions, focus on process, not in people, focus not in delivery. And I think in a nutshell, what I've been trying to do, and I still believe that it's possible to a certain degree to start influencing, making meaningful changes. And I'm still working on that. And what I think I try to do is really focus and expand as much as I can. So I try to work not just with the leadership, but work on the ground with the teams as well, a lot, quite a lot. Sit with them, work with them, participate on the events with them, help them on the day-to-day. And I also try to get really the contact with senior managers and understand also their viewpoint. And then I try to make these worlds a one world as opposed to two separate worlds.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Ambitious, but not very successful.
Thank you for being honest and open. I think we will share our experience and tips in this conversation. Our last panelist, and not the least, he is a Chief Transformation Officer. He is helping owners and CEO to unleash the greatness in their business. He is a former techie consultant and coach, and currently executive and mentor for large and small, upstarts and matured, founder and consensus leads across 20 plus countries on 5 continents and 50 industries. Please join our hands to welcome Frederick Om.
I don't think I can add anything except one thing. If you really observe, if you want to be a panelist, you need to have no hair. That seems to be obvious, especially if you're a guy. So more seriously, it would be more of the same, everything you heard here. I think one thing that you see in common between all of us is that we do not want to focus on one thing. We want to create bridges between different things, whether we want to create bridges between the agility of a small company inside a large company, or whether we want to create a bridge between the people on the front line and the executive. I'm just one of them, and that's it. So without further ado, let's go.
Yes. Since all of us have shared a bit of their journey and experience, right? There's one question I always have. If you could start again with a new company or a new engagement, how would you engage leaders? I mean, with all the knowledge that you have, you can start over again. How will you start again?
I have one thing.
Sure.
A post got me like that today. So I would like to share something about Agile. Um, if you see the first book that was really successful mainstream about Agile, it would probably be a lie. And that was Scrum, twice the work in half the time. And so I think that one of your questions when we discussed early was, what's one of the problems? And one of the problem is that, like many other trends, we make the promise of the benefits without discussing the cost. And there is no free lunch. If you want agility, if you want anything that is good in agility, you will need to question things that you've done for a long time. And so I would say it's not something that I would do. I would say it's something that I have done, and that has cost me job, and that has cost me programs. But the ones that start on better basis is to discuss the cost, to discuss the price to pay for the benefits.
How about the rest of panelists? What you do if you have a new opportunity again?
For me, Sion, I think I would challenge leaders to not be leaders.
Can you elaborate more, a bit more?
Yeah, somehow whether you're a startup or a medium-sized company, leaders have this expectation of themselves that they have to lead. And very often that involves managing, and that's when the problems begin. So if we could get leaders out of the way and let motivated people do what they think should be done, I think we will be on our journeys much faster.
Yeah, interesting point. Out of the way, we'll come back later when we heard opinion or way of starting new engagement from other panelists. How about Marcelo or Chun Chun?
Chuan Chuan.
Chen Chen.
I think my angle is always a bit different because I think for me it's always help them bring the focus back to the being, not the doing. We are all this craze to, I want this skill, I want that skill, I want to do this, I want to do that. But if somebody who says, I want to do Agile, but what does it mean? If you put the doing aside, what do you really want? What is the real benefit? What is the real why, compelling why? Because when the why is strong, then they will be willing to make the sacrifices to pay the price, because the change is difficult. And it's difficult if we are just thinking things at the process level. I just want to check off, I do this, then I'm agile, but it's not. Why is it that the organization still look different, not as effective as they should be? So I think looking at the why, really painting a picture of what a success look like. What do you really want on this journey as you embark on this very long transformation? And what is the benefit you really want to see? So that's usually my angle when I start.
Thank you. How about Marcelo?
Yeah, my is really, it's a bit of a, it's quite interesting. It's actually quite a bit of everyone here. I think the cost for me, I think it is one of the biggest things. I think one of the things I try to access and work is how much truth they can actually handle and how willing they are to actually move forward. I think this is really, for me, is the crucial point. I really trying to understand, because it's a two-way thing. One of the things I see a lot happening in our area is a lot of hiring of coaches, imposing this imposition. And I really think on this pull aspect. I really look for leaders or people that are trying to pull, so they feel the need of building something in a different way. So they have a vision, a strong vision of something they wanted to achieve, and they're willing to go in a different way to do that. So I think the way to correlate is, imagine if you are even Rafael Nadal, you are a super player, right? So, but he still need a coach, right? He still feel that he can improve even further. And he pulls for that. It's not someone pushing him to do that. So obviously I'm not trying to make a comparison between sport and company, but what I'm trying to emphasize is this pull aspect and how much sacrifice the person is actually willing to do to achieve that.
If I may on this, if we integrate, if you heard what Ramesh said and what Tren said,
yeah,
one could think that they are not the same thing. Ramesh was saying the leaders should get out of the way, and Tren was saying, but we're helping them grow and become the leaders that will help. Well, there is a bridge between these two things, and that's the fact that in a traditional organization or in a traditional setting, and it's even worse when the CEO is the founder or the owner, there is an ownership. The people at the top are got where they were because they were strong, because they were present, because they were the kind of people who would take charge. And then they see that at scale, when there is one person who takes charge, it's not enough. So they like the agility, but they don't understand that being a leader in an environment, in a setting that is, in a system that's going to become agile, there is another way of being a leader that includes letting go, creating a space, holding a space, and not being at the center of that space. And I really connect with what Ramesh and Tren and actually Marcelo spoke about in terms of coaching, because a lot of these things have to do with becoming another kind of leader, which is painful because it's renouncing a certain number of things that felt good as a leader before.
I do have a follow-up question, right? We know for any agility initiative and we need the leaders. At the same time, we would like leaders of certain behavior. How could someone start this discussion? I mean, it's a bit like, look, we want this thing to happen or to be successful, and there's some changes in the leader we would like to have. How would you start this conversation? Let's say, imagine that I'm the one who need to start. I'm actually 2 levels below the leader I'm talking with. How would you suggest me to start the conversation? Do you hear? My question is,
Yeah.
we need, yeah.
I meant this.
Okay, so that's my challenge. Let's say if I'm going to do it again.
Could you repeat the question?
For example, we need the leader to change the behavior, right? The leader need to create space, need to know the cause, need to do the pull system, and need to know the why. Let's say, imagine today, my boss said that we want to do this agility project with this subsidiary. And there's very little relationship with this subsidiary. There's MD in this subsidiary. And because the relationship is very new, I'm, as an agile coach, I need to approach the leader. And I know that there's some changes required in the leadership for this subsidiary in order to be successful. So my question is, what could you suggest this agile coach do when engaging this new leader for the initiative?
One thing that comes to mind, I'll try, and if I crash and burn, at least the others can have your revised version of the question. So I would consider one thing, which is contained experiment. What I mean by that is everyone sees the world from their position. No matter who we are the center of the world. And so it's very difficult for somebody who is an agile coach or a head of department or whoever to understand the perspective that an executive would have. Because we are all myopic in our vision. We see very well the things that are fairly close and very, very fuzzy the things that are far. It's the same for the executive. He will see very clearly the things he sees every day, but very fuzzily the things that are far. He might not even know your department. So one thing I would consider is the contained expand. And what I mean by that is realizing that you are a smaller part of the entire company, and to use this to your advantage. Basically, trying to say, hey, so I hear that you want to make us more resilient, or to make us more nimble and more innovative. And I was wondering whether you could be interested in seeing the kind of things that we're doing in our department, and see if you could give us something to chew, something to try, so that we see if it works when we do it this way, and if it works for us. There are two benefits to that. One is that it can establish a dialogue, because it's not, hey, here's my thing, here's my product, here's anything. But what matters to you that we could try, and obviously that piques, the second benefit is that it may pique a little bit the interest. Obviously, I don't advise to do this against the entire hierarchy. I've tried. It usually costs you your job. But there are ways to have the rest of your organization or your hierarchy support this, and either make it scary so that they don't want to do it and you go do it, and if it succeeds, they'll own it. So I would try the contained expand, because you're going to look small compared to the bigger team. Use this to your advantage.
Okay. So Fred, content experiment, right? So it means that try
Contain.
something,
Contain, as in
small experiment.
limited, yeah.
Okay.
It can blow up the whole thing, basically.
Any other idea about approaching new initiative, new senior leaders?
I come from the relationship building standpoint. I think to effect any change, you need to have positive currency, relationship currency. And you need to build trust first. We look at the 5 dysfunctions of teams. The base is you need to have the trust first to even have that conversation. I think using the consultative selling approach might help to understand, because you clearly know, I mean, as an agile coach, you will know that this works. You believe in it a lot, but it's not for us to impose it on other people. It's more like facilitating the process for them, bring them along with you so that they can see the value. But I think first we need to listen to them. What are the concerns? What goals do they want to achieve? Any objections that they may have, or maybe just perhaps they are just not clear about what this whole agile thing is all about. And then that's where you might have to do a little bit of teaching, sharing, which in my coaching I do for my clients. First time into executive coaching relationship, they don't know what to expect. So I think when people don't know what to expect, they tend to climb very high up the ladder of influence, and they assume the worst. They assume that you're the enemy, but actually you're not. So I think establishing that relationship, that you are partnering them, you are trying to help them, you are working together with them so that they can succeed, make yourself that advisor and a partner, then it usually melts away the resistance if you use a consultative selling approach.
So what I hear is share a bit of your knowledge, show a bit of, try to understand the situation. And you mentioned about consulting selling.
Consultative selling basically means we have to understand what the other party wants, right? And we help them understand and see what questions they have, what doubts do they have, and we lift all these objections one by one, create the trust, create a rapport, and then show a possible, of course, I think with the permission to show them a possible pathway through whatever you're trying to achieve here, that if we try this can help them achieve the goal that they want very much. And would they then be willing to, kind of like take a risk, make a calculated risk, create a success loops, and then for them to be more and more confident. I definitely don't think I think it's not the place for the Agile coach to impose. I think like in professional coaching, we never impose as well, but we bring them along the journey with us and hearing them out. I think keyword here is not that we try, it's we must understand what is their pain point. We must understand what they want to achieve, and then we show them a few possibilities of how they can get there. So it's really a co-creation process.
Okay, any other suggestion? Okay, Ramesh.
Okay. Yeah, so in my interactions so far, I found that most leaders think that it's not about them, it's about their people, and how their people have to change. So the first step I would normally recommend is to understand why this agile transformation is important to the leader, and try and figure out whether this leader actually has an idea whether there is a gap in his or her own competency set. There's normally a competency gap. Most leaders don't know it or don't see it. As a coach, our job is not to tell them what's wrong with them. So I have used, leaders love to read case studies in similar industries, for example. So I find case studies to be a very inspirational, for leaders, very inspirational. When they read of a case study, if they're working in a bank, they read of another bank. If they're working in a pharmaceutical, they read of another pharmaceutical. So then they start to inquire, so what do I have to do to be like them, right? What do I have to do to help my organization be like that organization? And then you begin the process of uncovering competency gaps. When you can partner with the leader to address competency gaps and address change in behavior, then you're on the journey. That's been my experience.
Thank you very much. Marcelo, do you have anything to add for that situation?
I think just probably one point. Definitely, I tried too big and failed miserably. It was very difficult. Obviously, the focus starts, with something not too big. It is definitely one thing I always do now. Not try too many things at the same time and too big. And one thing I've been doing recently is stop using any jargon, anything related to Agile. I stop all that. I don't talk about none of that. I just talk, what is your outcome? How can we achieve your outcome? And really look, because one of the key things, the leaders, they want to achieve something, right? And help them to elaborate what is that, and try to make that something that you can actually experiment and do. It is where the challenge is, because once you start experimenting and you go, another thing I try to understand from the person perspective and try to use a language that he understands. I try to connect with him the way that he is, so we can start building that. So it's really trying to shift it to this outcome, and not about the process, what we're gonna do, the team, how we set up, what the organization. It is really looking to the outcome and the challenges, right? Because we have constraints. Budget is one, regulators another constraint. So how can you do that? And try to inspire them on the innovation side. I think that's where I think most of the people follow things, right? Because it's been like that forever. But I try to say, it's really the way they should be done. Can we get someone else here, another lawyer, and try to get everybody on the same boat? That's the thing, trying to get everybody on the same outcome. So that's what I try. I use a lot of cartoons, guys. It's quite funny. I use a lot of cartoons, pictures, because I found that it's very easy to connect to people through that. And I did some of these things with senior execs, and they actually normally we think, well, they think that it is quite, not very good, but actually you get sometimes a lot of the sharing through a photo or through a picture. So I try to use this kind of thing, this kind of language.
So what I hear is one thing the coach could try is start small and forming the partnership relationship with the executive, right? I think and examine, share, try to understand where are the pain points, understand the goals and the aspiration, and I think Marcelo share about being light in approach, little jargon or no jargon, and more graphical information. Maybe I have also another question. I also sometimes faced with some executive, right? They say that this is corporate direction, right? It's like the case that I share. It's a subsidiary, it's a corporate direction. You must be agile or do agile by some timeline. And maybe there's one common response is the executive will tell the coach, this is a corporate direction. What do you want me to do? Just tell me. I mean, assuming that is the situation, is it we are still doing the same thing, like start small, engage as a partnership? Are we still doing the same approach?
So the scenario that you described is actually what I just experienced this week. So I've been asked to coach, one of the senior managers who've been assigned to lead an agile initiative, and so 2 weeks have gone by and he hasn't started his first sprint. So I see him and I say, "What's happening?" And he goes like, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do. The boss says we have to do agile projects. I've been picked to run a pilot. I don't even agree to do this." So, and here I am, I've got 8 people in a Scrum team, and they're asking me the same questions I'm asking myself. So it's actually happening out there.
Maybe other panelists can chip in. It's more like a conversation now.
That sounds like half the work in twice the time. Just saying. Just saying. This is so true, Ramesh. I've experienced this as well, where there is this sense that before things were done once, we would start with planning, and then we would do things, and then at some point we would point fingers at why it didn't work. So there was a certain process to things. It was reliable. And what I've experienced a couple of times now is that people, either they are not going to know how to start because they think they need to start right, and they're afraid to start, not knowing that the first time they'll crash, it's okay, that's part of the deal. Or they do it a couple of times, and then it looks like it's working, and then they say, okay, we got it. And they start imposing techniques that have worked serendipitously these few times. It is not completely obvious to people that you're never done. You just experiment, you try things, it works, you try other things. So people will have one of the two problems. Either they don't dare to start, or as soon as something is working, they'll try to institutionalize it. Have you had the same experience, Ramesh?
Yes. So in this case, this particular senior manager has been with the company 16 years. So it's the waterfall mindset battling the agile, the move to agile. They want to know what's the end goal, what will success look like, how they will be measured before they start. I welcome your thoughts, coaches, because it's happening to me right this week.
So how much are we going to save with this? Precisely.
Any other suggestion? I think we are here quite a safe environment. We are learning from each other. I think we are not looking for silver bullet or so-called correct answer.
Yeah.
To me, it's also a buy-in issue. Corporate company says it's like when companies come, I sometimes have to tell them off, you know. So some of my clients, potential clients, off. I would like you to transform this person. I said, huh? I think you cannot hire a coach to transform somebody if the person is unwilling. You know, I said you have to assess whether this person is coachable. You know, because it will take me many hours to talk to all your different HR business partner, L&D person, and then RO, and then a director, and then to find out that the coaching is not even coachable. So I think this concept of being on the same page, what does being on the same page mean? Yes, corporate direction says, yes, let's go this way, but are the people doing it? Are they on board? Are they really on board? You know, so sometimes, yes, I have clients who, because it's company sponsored coaching, we just get started immediately. There's no all this, you know, back and forth. But they say, okay, company would like me to be this type of leader. And then my question is, yeah, I know what the company wants. What about you? What do you want? You know, do you want this? Do you want this process? What's in it for you personally, on a personal level? So I think really to break it down away from the corporate direction, which is it can be a little bit stifling, or I don't know, the feeling is a bit cold, but bring out the warmth in the human being. That's why I talk so much about the being part, because the agility is not about what you do. Before you do something, you have to have the right mindset. And I want it to be organic. You know, what does it mean to be alive and adaptive, evolving? You know, why do you want this? What's in it for you? I don't care what the company says. Okay, what's in it for you? So far, when my clients who are agile coaches, when they try to push for changes, citing organization direction, I always tell them this story: you are not on the same page. When you are not on the same page, you cannot move forward. You know the water is great. You want to drag the horse there, but the horse doesn't want to drink the water. You have to make the horse thirsty. So can you give it salted apple to make it super thirsty? And then they will willingly work with you. And anyway, I maybe my understanding is that agile coach is not the one like in charge, right? They're not. It's not a reporting line. You know, it's not like they are the boss, you say do it and people will do it. So it's a soft power kind of position. So how do you employ a lot of soft power to influence? So you're going to make friends, you're going to make them love you. Whatever you say holds a lot of weight. And I think in my coaching practice, it is the same as well. I make my clients like me very much. You know, not that I do silly things or whatever with them, but truly just trying to understand them as human beings and make them feel heard. I think that is the buy-in that you really want, and it will then affect the change.
Great. Any more suggestion on this situation?
What Chen mentioned reminds me, for people who are in Singapore, there is a group called the Thought Collective, and you probably know Tanguy. This is something to check. One of the things he starts with his Facilitating Powerful Conversations course is, we are not agents of change. We are agents of awareness. And I'm having goosebumps right now, like every time I repeat this sentence, because for so long I've wanted to be an agent of change, and every time you're trying to be an agent of change, obviously you generate antiviral reactions. But there is something absolutely fabulous with, instead of coming to someone and saying, hey, something is wrong, sitting on the same side of the table as them and looking at the same set of data and saying, hey, wow, that's what you face. And then having them share what they feel, knowing that they're not going to be judged because we're sitting side by side with them. And we may be pointing at things, but we're not pointing at them. That being an agent of awareness is useful in many ways. And it's actually very good insight as well. You're no hero anymore. Just here to help.
So what I hear
Very
is
nice analogy.
what
The
I hear is
antiviral one. Sorry.
what I hear is, rather than coming headstrong or maybe aggressive, try to be the partner or maybe change the stance. Is it this what you're saying?
I guess it goes a little bit further because, you know, all these tables with two columns, and there is all the evil on earth and then all the good things, which are oversimplifications in the world. It's not that. There are many people who are not overly aggressive. They're just well-intentioned and eager and really willing to help. But they come from a mindset that they have the answer. They're generous, they want to help. A little bit like, I mean, you've heard me talk about this, but a little bit like a surgeon. They know they're going to nip and tuck, they know the thing. Tren, when she coaches, she doesn't think she has the answer at the beginning. She doesn't need to. And this being an agent of awareness is liberating because it's, you don't have to have the answer at the beginning. You don't even have to have the answer at the end.
Yeah.
Marcelo, go ahead.
No. Yeah. I quite like that the angle that you spin on it, and I think the phrase you mentioned, the agent of awareness, I think is really well placed, because what you see is the coaches trying to impose things, right? Oh, you needed to go, you needed to do, you needed to, and it created this anxiety, right? Because they feel I'm here to do that. If I don't do that. And actually, no, really, you're trying to bring this awareness. I think it is really well placed, actually. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it was a good, insightful one, the way that the phrase is constructed. I think for Ramesh, really, I think someone hire you there to help. I would start talking to that first person. What you want me to help you for? What is the goal here? And try to have like a side-by-side conversation with this person. So what is the problem? Let's look at this and let's try to this a bit more meaningful, and somehow try to bring the team together. These are 8 people there are willing to do something for sure. And if you make this guy bring this awareness that there are people who want to do things and there are some people that want some doing, and you bring them together and somehow try to put them together and have this conversation on a more side-by-side, I think it is one thing I would try. I don't know if it would work. Obviously, you need to check your conditions. And sometimes it's not just do things, right? It's understanding how you can set up the stage for that to happen. You know, create the environment for that to be happen, not just push forward. But I would try something like that.
Thank you, everybody. Sion, may I share?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll just relate the unfolding story to you. So you know, the nice thing about being an agile coach is I get to coach lots of people in the same big corporation. So it turns out that the person who needs coaching is not the team, is not the product owner or that team. It's the boss. Because this is a classic case of we got to do agile.
Surprise.
We got to do agile. The board wants us to launch the pilot this month, right? So you bloody well do it. So the person who needs coaching is actually the boss. So, you know, I'm fortunate in that I got a chance to go back and say, what's missing here, right?
Mm.
And
You know Michael Custer's Scream Master? It's something worth a look. It's a Scream Master, and it's a loop a little bit like Scrum, but if you know ULab, it's all about absencing. It's essentially pushing things and then pushing things under the carpet. There is, I don't know the leader you're talking with, but literally I took this drawing and I gave it to a former boss. And it was on a trip. It was just him and I. He looked at it and he said, "You have a message, right?" And it took time until we had another conversation about this. But then he asked if he could actually see what it would do in practice, this thing, to experience it.
Mm.
Because he realized he liked the words, but he didn't really know what it. So we played a game. I don't know how you do it, but I have a variant of poker where because I'm an asshole, I cut the cards in 4 pieces. So basically, it's very hard to make the cards back and to make your hand of poker. And the small game is literally just this. How do you win? By making a winning hand of poker when the cards are broken and you have little moments of little, like 3 minutes to do it or 5 minutes to do it a couple of times like this. And I've used it to reveal a lot of things. Like I never say that winning means winning against the others. And usually people will go against each other. But at times they just say, okay, we're going to together make one hand that's going to be working. And so what I'm just trying to say is to bring them into something where they can actually experience what this means, maybe a revealer of a lot of things that I would never know what's blocking them. But doing it this way, that one time worked for him. And I've used it in fairly large groups too.
thank you.
So all I'm trying to say is, how are they going to know what they're talking about? Because very often we speak about Agile like we would speak about being a billionaire. We have no freaking idea what it is.
Great sharing. And do you think it's a good time to open up the floor for other participants as well? So beside the panelists, other participants, you like to share what you would like to contribute for this situation? If not, then I will suggest that we go to the next segment, which is called Q&A. I will share the list of questions that are already in the system. And if you have a question, please add in, and then you can do the voting, which one more important in your perspective. Let me share the screen of the software. All right, do you see this? Do you guys see this?
The pinhole, yeah.
Yep, there are actually currently 4 questions. The first one is, how do we help leaders to embrace agility in the world of terrorism? Anyone would like to share your opinion?
I'm in a group right now. Who knows MG Taylor?
You mean the facilitator. So I think the question is about terrorism is actually.
I know. This is, I know.
Well, the other people.
I haven't even made connections between the two, but I'm in a group right now, in an initiative called Up Creation, with Matt and Gail Taylor, and a bunch of other facilitators. And one of the people I really respect in Singapore told me, I want to murder Taylorism. And one of the beautiful posters you find on Gail Taylor's website is just saying, don't try to destroy something you don't like. Just try to replace it with something that's better.
Okay.
So what I would say is, how do you help leaders to embrace agility in the world of terrorism? Show them something that works.
How about I give a more specific example? In the terrorism, right, we expect predictability, efficiency. I think that's something that we are being measured against, right? When can it be done? At what cost? And that is a reality, right, for us to be operate in the corporate. And that is the challenge, right? I think one of the challenges, this is against the Agile values. And
but if it is against the Agile values, I don't give a rat's ass about the Agile values just for Agile values. The Agile values are there to serve a purpose. They are not sacrosanct. They are there to serve a purpose, to help companies be more resilient, be more innovative, create things. And so, to me, if what we say to a leader is this is not congruent with the Agile values, we're missing the point that a business is not there to be agile. A business is to be agile, to be there next year or in 2 years. Different perspective. So for me, if in the world of terrorism, there is a challenge of, there is an expectation of predictability, and Agile doesn't necessarily give you that. Can you have a conversation about how predictable we can really be in a world like the one we have right now? Is it still important to be predictable? And what do we mean by predictable? On what do we need to be predictable? I think having this kind of business conversations rather than going directly to a value which you believe in, but they may not believe in, is probably a necessity. Marcelo.
Well, can I add something in on this a second? I just wanted to just literally add in, just based on what Fred was saying. I don't think you have to lose any of the things around predictability and cost and other things just because you're starting to have that open, honest conversation about agility in the organization.
Yeah.
Remember, Agile is not the goal, all right? The goal, as often I talk about, and as I know Munwai and JF here, they've heard me talk about, it's about creating those successful business outcomes, right? And as such, you know, as long as everybody is embracing that sort of philosophy about how we do things smarter, to get into Fred's point, we don't have to follow the set of values religiously, right? And those organizations that seem to follow the things religiously, practice every process and procedure in the book of a particular framework, are usually the ones that are doing it wrong. They're the ones that actually trip up and have the most mistakes. The ones who actually collaborate together, to my point I raised in the chat, are operating in an environment of trust and psychological safety where they can fail fast, learn from those mistakes, you know, succeed faster, shall we say, are going to be the ones, especially with our new norms and new ways of working, post-COVID lockdown and other things like that, who are going to reap the benefits because they are going to work and play together a lot smarter than some of those sort of old Tayloristic organizations who, through probably their bureaucratic command and control, micromanagement style leadership, are truly going to be left behind in the next chapter, whatever we are beyond COVID and beyond lockdown and, you know, our brave new world order that we all operate in and work in going forwards. So I don't think you lose any of the predictability. I think organizations are still going to be wanting to maintain a handle on predictability when things can be done. And you can do that from many agile approaches. The idea that you can keep a hand on your cost. All right, you can change some of your finance models. You can go from doing annualized budgeting to beyond budgeting, you know, quarterly funding models. You know, go from funding the teams to then fund, oh, sorry, I was going to say, go from funding the projects to funding the products to ultimately funding the teams, which is that nirvana, that goal that we should all aspire towards. Then at that point, you've got a handle on your cost. You know the predictability from those long-term teams that you've now created as well. You know how awesome they are in terms of having those high-performing teams, delivering those awesome business organizational outcomes. Again, all of those things that happen from Taylorism, you still get that with Agile, but it's that different mindset, it's that different shift of doing things smarter rather than harder. I just wanted to add that in.
Thank you, thank you. Any other response or suggestion? If not, then we can move on to the second question.
I would like to add one thing about Terrorism. Terrorism worked really well in a certain context. It worked really well in a context where demand was stable and growing, supply was stable and growing, markets were generally not colliding one with the other, so there were not a lot of surprises where, for instance, in a particular industry, you could be attacked by another one. So with all of this, planning well at the beginning and then executing in a repeatable manner worked well. It was a good system at the time for the company. Probably not for the individuals, but for the company, it worked well. If we spend time gaining awareness of the fact that this world is gone, that markets are colliding, that surprises come often and from everywhere, that demand is variable, that supply is variable, you easily come to the conclusion that, as Gal said, we can get a certain degree of predictability, but it is not going to be the same that we would have dreamt about in a stable environment. So what you can decide, through this, you know how much, what cost you are going to have. You know how often you will have increments and improvements. So there are quite a lot of things you will be able to gain. But gaining the awareness that because the environment has changed, the way we walk is probably different. Seems like a natural conversation. If you switch off all the lights in your house and you close your blinds, you're probably going to walk differently in your house. And that's really what companies are doing right now. So what you do is you walk in smaller steps and you check around.
Thank you, Fred. Any more response before we move on to the next question?
I think I come from a very human-centered approach. Like if you look at the lifespan of businesses, it is shortening quite drastically. And it's like, what happened to dinosaurs? They went extinct, right? But why? Okay, probably for them it's a different reason. But why do some organisms become extinct? Because they didn't change, they didn't evolve. Why are organisms like cockroaches, you know, they last for so many years, you know, from pre-dinosaur times till now. So I think when I look at agility from my point of view, because again, we come from very different space. To me, it's just about, are you evolving? Are you adapting? Are you able to make changes? Are you able to respond to the human needs? A lot of businesses that I work with right now, they are, is driven by consumer behavior. So when the consumer behavior change, they're human beings, right? So if we understand consumers as behavior, we will know what to change in the business. But one gap I'm seeing is companies kind of see consumers as humans, but pay less attention to what the teams, the organization really need. So for me, in my scope of work, I guess right now with COVID, some of these reasons for change becomes really strong, because if they don't adapt, they will really go bankrupt and they will die. They have to find another way to generate income. And then they start studying what is the consumer behavior, what are the changes. They start predicting what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. They brace themselves. They know that it's going to be a series of starts and stops. None of the strategy will be permanent. Maybe it'll be predictable up to a quarter, but they don't hold the false hope that things will be permanent. And then this is the time where they really put a focus back on the human needs in their teams. What is everyone going through? If we are going through so many changes from quarter to quarter, or even month by month, if there are so many changes, what must we communicate? The why, the how, understanding, empathizing with them, answer the concerns. You know, we really have to pay attention to the concerns. Then you can have the quick evolution. The whole ship can be moving together. Then I think then as a large organization, then it's easier for them to be agile. But many years ago, I was in ministry, I think local ministry, and as a person working on the ground, of course, when the policies come down from the ministry level, I get very perturbed. Why did this policy come down? It's totally not reflecting what we need on the ground. It feels like it's totally detached. And one of my colleagues used a really good analogy. It's like an aircraft carrier trying to turn, and they take 10 minutes to turn, you know, because it's such a large organism, a large organization. So I think right now for leaders, it's also for them to understand changes don't just happen just like that. We have to continue to blow air into the balloon. What is it that we are trying to achieve here? What's our North Star? Our North Star may not change, but our pathways to achieve it has to change. So usually that's an analogy that I share with my clients. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Chun Chun. All right. Next question is about how can we give hope to our teams who see and get discouraged with leaders who say they want them to be agile, but they're not walking in the talk. That means action and speech not the same. Any suggestion of this situation when the action and the speech are not the same? Anyone would like to respond to this question, including the participants?
Actually, I don't think that the problem, it may not be, let me say it differently. I have seen several cases that correspond to this question, where it was not that the leader had misaligned walk and talk. It was, the misalignment was deeper. It was simply that they thought this was a toolkit. This was something that could be done, applied. So obviously it would be at a lower level. Whereas it's more a discipline. It's something that is holistic. If it's a little bit like a negotiation. If you and I want to negotiate something and you don't want to negotiate, we're not going to be able to negotiate. It needs the entire system to want it. And I don't think that we often discuss that. as we mentioned with Ramesh at the beginning. So that's where I would see the problem. Do they even understand what it means? If they are aware of what it means, then we may fall into the problem of misaligned between walk and talk. But I don't think they even know that.
Any other comment about this question?
Can I comment something about it?
Sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, all right. So basically, there are. I mean, personally, I feel there are two perceptions normally. So I think the first one, perhaps, is that as what Fred mentioned, they're thinking it as a toolkit. So most of the organizations normally they just think that Agile is just for IT guys. Yes, okay, you just adopt Agile. I'll send you for courses, and then you do daily stand up. And so I don't care what you guys doing. So at the end of the day, we will be Agile already. So basically, they think that's as a very mechanical process. And then, but there is another perception that perhaps maybe because there is a misalignment or maybe there is a disconnect in terms of communication, is that the leaders wanted to be Agile. They really do. It's just that they don't know how to do it. I mean, how to be Agile, basically. So perhaps they don't know that there is this thing called value principles. There is this mindset they have to change. You know? They just heard the jargon. Let's say they read the book. Okay, oh, what do you call twice the
Six times.
I mean, yes.
In half the
so
time.
I mean, half the time. So I mean, it's really, I mean, it's a very good business jargon, but at the end of the day, they might not really understand how to go there. So yeah, perhaps that's one of the perception.
Any other comment before we move on?
Simon, can you show the question again?
Sure. It's about misalignment between, it's actually how can we give hope to our teams who see and get discouraged when leaders who say they want them to be Agile but are not walking talk.
And this is coming from the Agile coach perspective of the team managers.
We don't know. Whoever raised this question, maybe you can elaborate more.
Yeah, I'm not really clear about where this question is coming from. That's why I'm still a bit puzzled.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can talk about it. It's really about communication, right? Teams that are working on initiatives or even products or new business creation, it really needs an opportunity to be able to communicate their wins or their progress, or most importantly, their learnings. And so if there is a platform for them to share, whether it's retrospectives or reviews, that's really the opportunity for the team to be able to share and hopefully win over these leaders to progress that they're making. Right? So it's about communication.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Anything anybody want to share about this situation?
I might bring in the victim versus player mindset here. It can sound a bit challenging. However, if we just look at what we can control, we cannot control what the boss does. And anyway, the boss may not show support in the same way that you do. So if this person is a middle manager, there's a reason why you're the middle manager. You have to manage out, you have to manage down. You know, so okay, while you know that's a reality, you can't change anybody. You can only influence. And if they give you permission to influence them and change them, then good for you. But if worst case scenario, you want to be responsible for the team, if that is what is important to you, then you have to play that role to motivate and help them. And perhaps if there's a culture and they are bold enough or well prepared to have the direct communication, I think that might be something to be brought up as well, and to be given as feedback, you know, or as an observation. When the boss does this, we don't feel supported. Just a very objective kind of conversation. And I think too little of such conversations happen in the workplace. Because when it is common when clients come to the session, they complain about situations that are outside of their control. And of course, then I would challenge them. Did you raise this? Would you like to raise this? And then, no, I cannot. So who says you can't? You know, and then we have these little conversations about it. Say, hey, actually, it's not too bad, because I believe everyone is good, and we all act in the way that we with the best intentions. It's only the behavior. And if we are curious and we take that curious approach and we ask, oh, you seem very detached from us, for example, can I understand what's happening? They say, oh, I'm just preoccupied, I'm stressed, or whatever it is, you know, and it probably has nothing to do with whether they are supportive or not.
Thank you.
You know, yeah.
Yes, I think Gauri would like to say something.
Yes, thank you, Siobhan. I would like to also help answer this question, if that's okay.
Sure.
You said it's open to listeners as well.
Yeah.
I feel that there are a host of human capital change management solutions that are addressing leadership fear of agility, or the leader is not walking the talk once you've already started an agile project or a transformation. Skip level meetings, leadership coaching for your leadership team before they dive into the agile ocean, or engagement surveys. In fact, Glint is this firm that LinkedIn just bought, and they've revolutionized how people and their sentiments are captured, not once in the entire year as an employee engagement survey, but like a pulse check. Every 2 weeks, you could run a pulse check with your team. So there are a host of measures that could be put alongside a change or an agility measure. Trying to do agile in an organization by itself without supporting your teams or the leaders who are managing those teams, I think companies run into a rough patch. So, and also, like somebody said, depends on who's asking that question. How can I get my manager to do, or whatever? Depends. Are you a board member? There are so many things you can do. Are you an absolute foot soldier? Yes, there are a few things you can do when a 2-week pulse survey is being run. Speak your mind. So I think there are many solutions, no matter where you are in the company. So that's my 2 pence. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. In the interest of time, now it's 9:20. Maybe we can answer the last question. The last question is this. I come from human capital consulting side of business and find that agility in HR is considered quite alien. It's assumed to be only for software-driven project. What is your experience? Any response for this question?
So there is a there is a whole agile HR movement. There are tracks and conferences and all that all over the world now. But I think for functions in an organization that are not so that are support functions, maybe HR, finance, as a couple of examples, I think we have to demystify agile. We can't let agile continue to become this cult that only the software or the techies are into it. And I think that's why one of the reasons why there is this gap between some of the people in an enterprise and trying to understand this mystical world of agile. And it's our fault. It's our job to demystify it, decultify it, and use just business talk to say, how can you improve your speed? How can you improve your efficiency? how can you make people successful? So, you know, you just use regular language and get away from this cult language that we're all so used to. And I think then HR will start to embrace it as well.
Totally agree with Ramesh. The thing is, at some point, I may piss off a couple of people here, but by now, you know, I don't care. Agile is basically the learning organization by Peter Senge, reinvented 50 years later. So, and because they hadn't read the book, they decided to call it Agile. But frankly, that's what it is. So if you look at Lean, if you look at learning of organizations, if you look at system thinking, there are a lot of other currents that started way before Agile. And to agree with Ramesh, Agile is just about really saying we are going to go in small steps. We'll try to create something that's meaningful instead of just pushing stuff. And possibly something that also answered the previous question, we'll have relationship as a product. Our relationship should improve as we go. And frankly, HR should be interested in that. So I totally agree with Ramesh. There is no reason why it wouldn't be used in HR or in maintenance or in finance, if you look at what it is really trying to achieve and remove the jargon, as Marcelo said.
Yes, Gary, please go ahead.
Thank you, both of you, for answering that. That was my question. Ramesh, I have a query to your answer. And you said it is HR's job to or Agile people's job to demystify it. And a lot of HR folks are attending conferences around the world, and that's true. What I'm experiencing is line HR leaders attend a host of conferences and webinars through the year. What it hasn't done for them is change their ability to envisage agility in their roles, in their team's roles. So how do I bridge that? Because when you start talking to them in a very layman term, what is Agile, and no jargons used, they tend to clam up, thinking this is not us, this is how our team runs, or they start to give you a barrage of excuses why in their organization they can't run Agile. So it is in fact still alien to them, no matter how many conferences they attend. So do you have any experience working with such people, turning them around? Any of the panelists? I would really appreciate.
JF, you have something to say?
So one of the things that I'm going to say here is that jargon is very triggering for people, especially as you go outside the domain of your product teams, typically software. And so what you need to do is to get rid of that jargon. And this is, I think, one of the pitfalls of the Agile movement, right? When they started introducing these new terms like Scrum Master or Product Owner. And to people, they're like, how do I work with these titles? So if you take that jargon out and just concentrate on the outcomes, and to use Chen Chen's word, it's the being, not the doing part, right? So when we were doing the entire rollout of Agile at Yahoo as an enterprise back in 2005, we were running into this very early. And as a coaching team within Yahoo, we decided to drop all the jargon in Scrum, more or less, and concentrate on, you're now an Agile product manager. You are now an Agile project manager or whatnot, and keep those terms as opposed to changing and using these new terms, right? And as we started doing things, as you get your teams more agile, you start butting into the other parts of the organization that are causing drag, so to speak, right? And so when you think of agile transformations, there's a big problem in that executives typically think there is an end to an agile transformation when there is not. It is always evolving because you might start with your product teams, but end up having to affect everything. And that's where the stomach of these changes comes into play. If the organization is not willing to stomach those changes, you can only take your agile transformation so far, right? And so as an agile coach, how do you deal with that? Depends on how much risk you want to take, right? In some cases, I've played very cautious and just did things at the team level to make HR functions better, for example. And then once you have that, then people start saying, hey, how'd you do that? Then that's the time you try and influence other parts of the organization, but try not to use jargon. And you can apply Agile to any industry, not necessarily just tech. I'm working right now with a nonprofit in the mental health space. And trust me, trying to talk to them without using any of the Agile jargon has been a very interesting journey for me, but I'm finding a lot of success in that. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, JF. How about Fadli?
Very good.
All right, so I just wanted to share my experience. I mean, it's actually this was 2 days back, recently. So very recently. So what happened is that couple of weeks back, I actually kind of like try to socialize about business agility into the organization. So again, I don't use the like what others like use the word like Scrum Master, all these jargons, right? So I, like what other panelists mentioned earlier, I directly speak about the outcome, okay? I directly mention about the business agility. So the state whereby you can respond fast to the market. So I just say like that. Then everyone's actually tuned in. And then finance tune in, HR tune in. And then after that, I actually wanted to get a, what do you call, collect an interest group, have an interest group internally. So I purposely asked the HR to send the email. So I purposely asked the HR. HR has asked me, what is Agile actually? Why you asked me to send this email to the whole organization? So I asked her, actually it's about people development. It's about people development. Oh, really? Oh yeah, I have problem on how to engage people nowadays, especially Corona. Oh, okay, I know the solution. You just join the interest group. I will explain it to you. So basically, so she got the bait basically, and then explained that, oh, okay, oh, so what are the things that we can do in, for example, in Agile? Okay, maybe we can know our team better, how we can develop our teams, for example. Oh, do you know there is this technique when we facilitate a virtual meeting called liberating structures? Have you heard about it? Oh, no, I don't know. Okay, that's good. That's a good way to get feedback from everyone, to get them engaged. So, okay, I want to learn more about Agile then. So yeah, I started from this angle basically. So it's really depending on who we talk to. I mean, senior leaders, they want to see the bottom line, right? So we talk about the bottom line. Finance, they want to see how we do the beyond budgeting, like what Giles mentioned. And for HR, we talk about people. So it's really, because Agile is really encompassing everything. I mean, that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Fali. We almost come to the end. Anyone would like to say something before we end the session?
Yeah, I just want to add actually a couple more things. I think building on top of what everyone has already said, because I have worked with Agile. I'm not an HR professional, but I have worked with HR on the Agile journey. And yes, definitely not the jargons, but really for HR, it's a little bit different. First of all, they need to understand what the whole Agile thing is about. They had no idea that performance management is actually driving behaviors. They think that they're measuring the right thing, while I challenge them, well, here's not. What kind of behavior are you driving? You're driving individual contribution. and Agile is doing team collaboration. Why is team collaboration so important, right? So these are really things to dive into them for them to understand. And then I was then asked them for their projects for HR. So I believe that Gori is asking for, well, you know, I'm in HR. What does that have to do with me, right? How do I, in an HR department, how do I do this? Now, as I said, I'm not an HR professional, but I have worked with them. So in their projects that I found out that, you know, they do have the same issues, meaning they do actually need to have their projects to come out quicker. They need to get buy-ins from people. They cannot have their own silos and then roll things out and then find out that the company actually don't like those projects that they were actually working on, the initiative that they actually wrote out. Well, how do you do that? Well, Agile allows you to help you to be able to do that faster, to be able to experiment. So all these things now sort of pique the interest and go, oh, really? So and then and they start then digging into, well, then how does it work for us? They even talked to me, said, well, daily stand-up doesn't work. I said, don't do it. Why do daily stand-up? Okay, this backlog thing doesn't work. Well, you do need a list of things that you're going to do, right? Oh, okay. Like basically is to do it where what it actually makes sense to them. Now, as I said, I'm not an HR professional. And for Guri, if you want to know, specifically for HR, there is something called Agile HR Community. You can actually search online. They are actual HR professionals who are actually doing Agile and training how HR actually do Agile. What does it mean for HR to actually do Agile? Another thing that I want to mention is for HR, HR actually partner with business a lot. The HR business partners actually partner with business to do a lot of things specifically for business. So that's the other side of HR. And for those kind of, for that group, the business partners, they will need to really understand the teams instead of, this is from an HR perspective, this is how we do things, this is how it should be done. No, you need to understand the teams. And as JF mentioned, it doesn't matter what industry, you need to understand those teams, you need to understand the context, you need to understand the effect of what you're doing. And if you pose it that way for HR people, it's actually quite curious and intriguing for them because they actually never looked at it that way before. And then they get curious, and at least for the HR business partners, they would now realize, okay, they cannot be standalone. They cannot just partner with senior executives. They actually need to understand the company vision. They need to understand the product strategy. They actually need to understand how the team actually works. And they can truly partner with the product development teams to figure out what initiatives to do, what kind of processes would actually work for them, and what kind of structure. So that's actually my experience, and it actually works really well, even though it was a lot of pushback from HR before. But when they saw that different cultures, different offices is actually doing things differently, they start getting curious. So that's just another example of how it could work with another sort of department within HR. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you,
Oh,
Manwai.
yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for your contribution. Okay, Fred, you have something to say.
Thank you, Manwai, because frankly, I don't think an organization can really be agile at scale without HR. It's the same as trying to be agile, developing software with contractors without having agile procurement. There are quite a few things that are going to be the nervous system of the organization, and trying to fight that battle not against HR, but with HR is really worth it.
Thank you, Fred. I think we have run out of time. Anybody would like to say a few words, especially for those who have not spoken? like Andrew, Ray, Chong Wai, and Sammy. Do you guys want to say something? And how about Salvador?
No, not for me. It's quite insightful knowledge from both of you. Thanks.
Yeah, right now I don't have anything to contribute actually, but this session is very insightful. Thank you, everyone.
All right, I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. See you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
So,
Oh, bye. Bye, girls.